What's up, everybody? The Game 2K2 here again, and I'm here for another quick review. And I know this isn't the newest game to review. This is LA Noire. This was released last year. One of the reasons why I'm doing this game is because I'm a little short on time over the next couple weeks. I'm working on my equipment and all this stuff for Comic Expo. I'm getting ready for that event, so that's taking up a lot of my time. So I don't really have as much time as I usually do to do these videos, so I'm going to do an older game today. Not really older, this released last year, so it's not really that old. But one of the reasons why I really want to do LA Noire today is because I'm still running into gamers, especially at conventions, that have never played this game, and I don't understand why. You know, there's a lot of fans of Rockstar out there, and I'm a little curious on why they never picked this game up. But with LA Noire, one of the main reasons, the excuses that I constantly get from gamers is because this doesn't have multiplayer. And nothing against multiplayer, I like Call of Duty 4, I like that multiplayer, and I like a couple games after that, like Halo, I like the Halo multiplayer. But I feel like, that multiplayer is really taking over the world of gaming, in a bad way. It's taking gamers, out of the single-player modes, and I love single-player games, good ones for that matter, and LA Noire is one of those great single-player games. And, single-player games, just games that don't have multiplayer, they're constantly ignored now, and this was a game that didn't deserve to be ignored. But, I'm going to show you what this game is like, and give you a good sense of what the game is like. And, I've already played the game all the way through, so I get to select, the cases and all that stuff. So, yeah, let's get started. First off, I love this menu screen, mainly because you can actually see someone walking in the background. Before we get started, there's the versions of this game, like the PS3 and the Xbox 360 version. This is the Xbox 360 version. The big difference between the two, there wasn't that big of a graphical difference. The PS3 had a few, had less glitches than this game does, but the glitches don't harm the Xbox 360 version. They're very minor glitches, but the PS3 was a little more clear, not as many of them. But the big difference was the PS3 version released on one disc, and the Xbox 360 version initially released on 3. It's 4 now. This is the complete edition, so there's 4 discs to this game. But yeah, that was really the only big difference, and it wasn't that big of a deal. I know many gaming fans kind of threw a fit over that, especially Xbox 360 owners, because they had to keep switching out discs, but I don't care. But yeah, let's get started here. Now again, I've already played this game all the way through, which is why I'm able to select cases, and obviously I have to put in a different disc to do the different cases. I believe the traffic is also on disc 1. But let's try the patrol. Let's do Buyer Beware. Now, LA Noire, to kick this off, I can honestly say this is probably one of the most addicting games I've played in a very long time. I mean, I just find myself, even playing it all the way through, just playing it over and over and over again. But it has flaws, and I'll discuss those flaws as this quick review goes on. First off, I love these cutscenes. Graphically, this is a very impressive game for both the PS3 and Xbox 360. Despite the Xbox 360's glitches, it's still very impressive. This was I think this was the first ever game to include full motion facial expressions. What they did was they recorded, real expressions from actual people, and they put that into the game. So it's really, really awesome.
Could you stand clear of the body, please? Has anyone called an ambulance?
I mean, look at that. That's impressive.
But I'm afraid he's dead.
But one thing I'm noticing about the complete edition when comparing it to the original version is that they did enhance parts of the graphics that were not so impressive. Like, the facial expressions, they've always been impressive in both the regular edition and the complete edition, but the difference here is that they made the bodies of the characters match up. That was the problem with the original version, where the faces were so impressive, but the rest of it was kind of off. The environments look better, the cars look better in the complete edition. And that's really kind of cool that they were able to improve the game from what it actually originally was, which is impressive. But this is the main detective work. You get to investigate, the bodies, the dead bodies, and all that stuff. And then, as we go in, you get to investigate different objects in the stores or wherever you might be doing your detective work. So we'll check inside the jacket. He finds a piece of paper. I always find myself kind of reading everything on the paper because they go into detail on some of these clues, and it's really interesting. But you have to scroll all the way down to get the clue. Now, for those who did play the game, a lot of complaints went over, how repetitive the game was. And I can understand that it is kind of repetitive, especially, with the detective work. But I think the main problem with L.A. Noire is its action. The action in the game is not that impressive. In fact, the action doesn't play a huge role at all. In fact, it's so minor in the game that if you fail at the action scenes, like the shooting scenes, enough, it actually gives you the option to skip it. This is the first ever game that I've actually played where it allows you to do that, which tells a story that, the action plays little to no role in completing this game. Now, there is no such thing as not finishing a case in this game. You complete every case, but you have to get everything right. You don't have to get all the questions right, but you have to come to the right conclusions. You have to arrest the right people on some missions. So there is a way to kind of fail at this game, even though you can complete it anyways.
Can I? I'm Officer Phelps. Yes, I'm here about the shooting. Did you know the victim?
He was my boss.
Again, I'm just really impressed by the facial animation, and I'm really surprised. I figured, that a lot more developers would get into this, especially since Rockstar did. But for some reason, Rockstar, is one of very few companies that actually does this. I'm a little surprised that more developers haven't gotten into this.
I look around the shops at lunch. I was in a store when Mr. Gage, my boss, bursts in yelling that I'm late on my lunch.
And?
We came back.
And again, this is one of the graphical changes they made, especially with the bodies of the characters. This original cutscene, the body for this woman looked completely off, and the cop suit that he's wearing looked completely off from what the faces look like, and that was really kind of the errors with the graphics of the game, and that was one of the things that many reviewers brought up for this game. And with these interrogations, this particular mission that we chose actually gives you the answer.
You're lying, Miss Coletta. You know what happened.
But with these
You're going to
interrogations,
There's nothing to tell. I've done nothing wrong.
you can read the expressions on certain characters' faces, and that's what helps you answer, to figure out whether they're lying or not, or telling the truth. That's what helps you get those correct. But some facial expressions are really tough to read in this game.
Your pearl earrings, Miss
Some characters, their expressions kind of look the same, and Rockstar kind of did that intentionally to kind of throw players off. So there are moments where you will be really confused, and you'll be stuck on a question for probably 20 minutes trying to figure out the frickin' answer.
Edgar Kalu. He runs the jewelry store. He showed me a lovely watch. Mr. Gage
And also to know whether you got the correct answer, the music also plays certain notes. Like it's a piano. If the piano hits a low note, then you got it wrong. If it hits a high note, then you got it right. So that was a nice little addition.
And yells at me to get back to work.
Then what happened?
We get back here as I hear a loud bang. Mr. Gage clutched
Again, I
his
love
back.
these cutscenes. I just really like watching them. Just
And
just the
another, and another.
impressive just the impressive
Mr. Gage
graphical
also
look,
made me
and just the voice acting is really impressive. Rockstar chose some great actors for this game.
Which jewelry store?
Hartfield, Broadway, between.
And pretty much, the actors who are doing the voice work and all that stuff, those are the ones that they did the full motion for, and literally you're seeing the actors in the game, just their 3D graphic lookalikes. These are literally the actors, and the fact that they were able to get all their expressions and how they acted into this game is just really cool. So now we're going to select Doubt.
You're making me angry, Miss Coletta.
And again, I don't know whether you can hear it on your video, but that's the high note, the piano.
Why Mr. Kalu shot Mr. Gage?
Mr. Gage hates Jews. A lot of people do. It's not my fault if he has nice things.
How many shots did you hear, Miss Coletta?
It's difficult to remember.
Now there really, there really aren't that many missions in this game. Obviously, it takes up 4 discs, but the reason why it takes up 4 discs, there's probably 5 to 6 missions, detective cases on each disc. But each detective case takes about 45 minutes to an hour, or even longer than that, which is why the game is as long as it is. I mean, this is one of the longest games I've played in a very long time. Games, nowadays have gotten, where the single-player modes have gotten really short, especially, with the Call of Duty franchise, where the single-player has gotten to, 4 or 5 hours. This game, depending on how good you are, could take you up to maybe 12 to 13 hours to finish, or you can make it even longer. I really stopped, to check everything. This game took me about 20 hours to complete. And, I love games that are that long, and, we'll check some of the items here, and again, you get to check shoes, and the character voices out whether this clue is going to mean something or not. And that clue has nothing to do with this case. Now, control-wise, the game is okay. The character doesn't control perfectly. There are a few problems with this character when trying to control him. Sometimes he might not turn enough. Sometimes he might turn too much, depending on how you're controlling him. So sometimes it can be really sensitive. Sometimes it's not sensitive at all. So it's a little iffy on the control. From a control standpoint. Okay, now I know there is a clue in the trash can. There we go. And the gun. Like that, you can manipulate the objects in your hands. If they're actual clues to your case, you can manipulate them and read what's on the item that you're holding. It's really cool.
We have the murder weapon. And the murder. The girl saw it all. A killer works at a jewelry store called Hartfield. That's a couple of blocks from here. Thinking what I'm thinking? Tate, maintain the perimeter.
Now, also, another thing that was not a big part of this game was the driving. Usually that's, and for some reason my...
Shell cases. These look like 32s.
And when you're passing by a clue, you'll hear the piano notes hit, but also your controller will vibrate to let you know that you're passing by a clue and that you need to check it out. But, like I was saying, the driving is also not a big part of this game, which is surprising, because usually driving is such a big part of Rockstar games. But if you hold down, again, this is the 360 version, but if you hold down Y long enough, you can get your partner to drive, which is really, really cool.